Hey there, Ron here. Lately we've had a lot of folks inquiring about doing lease options in Texas. So all of you Texans, listen up. Here's what I know. In Texas, you cannot lease it from the seller and sublease it to the tenant buyer. Actually, you can. You just can't collect a non-refundable option deposit, which in effect means you can't. Okay? Because if you can't collect the deposit, why do you even want to do it? Now, there are quite a few Texans that will put it under contract on a lease purchase from the seller and then assign that contract to a buyer and pick up a few $1,000s. That does not violate the Texas law, but because the seller is lease optioning their homestead to a tenant buyer is what it amounts to. You're just assigning your contract. However, I don't like that plan. For one thing, it's small money. It's small money. You got to do a lot of deals to make any real money. It's kind of akin to wholesaling to me. You get one small check, you got to go do it again, do it again, do it again. Plus that small check is short-term capital gains. Might want to point that out to you. So you'll pay the maximum taxes you have to pay. So here's what you do in Texas. You must own the home before you can lease purchase it and collect a non-refundable option deposit. Now, owning the home doesn't mean free and clear. You can buy the home subject to, which means you just simply take over the debt. Seller deeds you the house in front of an attorney. You start making payments on the seller's debt, at which point you and the seller agree. And in my case, I don't ever agree till at least 2 to 3 months after I get the deed. The seller makes the next couple of payments. It's just part of my offer. Incidentally, I'm not asking them to do that. I'm not begging them. It's a condition of my purchase that I start making payments 3 months after I take title to the house. You'll pay the closing costs in that case, but in Texas, I can't buy a lobster dinner for what you're going to pay in closing costs. I mean, cheap, cheap, cheap in Texas. So fortunately, you're in one of those states where closing costs are not an issue. Can't say that about all the other states. Some of them are really outrageous. So you can take it subject to, or you can buy it with owner financing. One of those two ways is how you're going to buy the house. You're probably going to do more owner financing than subject tos, but that actually depends on what part of the market you're going after. For example, if you're going after the low-end part of the market, you're going to do a lot of subject tos. People will gladly just walk away if you relieve them of the debt. If you're going into a higher-end market like median and above, you're probably going to do more owner financings because the higher priced houses you deal with, in my experience, the more people are afraid to just deed it to you and walk away. But they are not afraid of owner financing. So in Texas, if it's not a subject, if the seller hasn't told you I'll sell for what I owe, if they have, it's probably subject to, or if the seller's got equity in it. In other words, you're paying the seller more than what they owe, it's a wraparound. It's a wraparound trust deed is what it's called, an AITD, all-inclusive trust deed, but Texans refer to this, closing agents refer to it as a wraparound. So your mortgage to the seller, or your trust deed to the seller, deed of trust, to the seller, will wrap around their underlying loan. And you'll pay them usually the same payment that they're paying to the bank, sometimes higher if they got a lot of equity. But once you close that purchase on a wraparound or on a subject to, then you're okay to install a lease option tenant buyer in the house and collect a non-refundable deposit. Now you're also going to hear that if the lease is longer than 3 years, then it turns into a sales contract. Which, well, so what? What if it does? Okay. First of all, I'm not going to lease it longer than 3 years. I never give a buyer that long to cash out of the house. Doesn't mean I might not extend it if we get to the end of that term. I let the buyer tell me how long they need to get cashed out. Most of them say 1 year. Most I ever heard one say is 2 years. So if I lease it, if I sell it within the first 2 years, that 3-year thing is irrelevant. But let's say you don't. Let's say it turns into an executory contract, which is what they call it. That means it looks more like an owner financing deal. So what? So what if it's an owner financing deal? It might change your tax structure on it, but not much. Because if it's owner financing, that means you're going to pay taxes on the money as you receive them, since it's an installment sale. But if they call it an owner financing deal, then you collect the same amount of payment for the same amount of time. And really, I don't see what the harm is if someone were ever to call it that. However, using that threat, using that scare tactic certainly creates some nice seminars and compels people to come because they're afraid. Afraid of what exactly? First you got to ask yourself, who is it that will determine it's an executory contract? And nobody will unless you get into a legal battle, and either way you're going to win even if they consider an executory contract. So let's getting these deals done and not all of the fear mongering that people around you will pass upon you if you have open ears and are willing. By the way, it probably wouldn't hurt you to go pull up the Texas law. Pull up the law. All laws are a matter of public record. Read it for yourself and then make sure you go to the exception column as well. So yes, you can do lease options in Texas as long as you own the house, or you can also assign lease options to a tenant buyer and get out. That is your choice. Now you will need Texas agreements to do lease options in Texas. So see your attorney or see a good title company perhaps, or maybe even another very skilled investor who has done their homework and get it from them. I do not have a Texas lease option agreement on our Gold Club, so you'll have to get that on your own. Once you have it, you have it. So with that said, if I missed anything, and I'm sure I did, submit your questions and I'll answer them right back. I'll either do it on our live Q&A every week, or we might just email you the questions back. My staff will send it to me and I will reply quickly. With that said, see you soon.